Welcome to this edition of What Did I Miss? Where today I'm reviewing the first episode of Star Trek Lower Decks and pointing out Easter eggs, as well as any references to past, future, and alternate timelines. It would be hard to argue that the fever around Star Trek has ever been greater than it is right now, and this show is a testament to the fans' desire for more of the franchise in any and all forms. Lower Decks is the 9th Star Trek series to be produced and the second animated one, the first being produced in 1973 after the original series went off the air. It is developed by Mike McMahon, who gained fame and an Emmy from writing on Rick and Morty, and has already been renewed for a second season, making it the 4th current active Star Trek property. It also starts 23 straight weeks of New Trek, which will include the 3rd season of Star Trek Discovery. So far, the reviews for Star Trek Lower Decks have been mixed, but stick around and I'll tell you what I think of the first episode after I go through the Easter eggs and references. This is What Did I Miss?
That's more your specialty.
So I will be talking about spoilers from the show as well as the movies and everything else Star Trek. So if you don't want spoilers, be warned. Lower Decks takes place on the USS Cerritos and follows 4 junior officers aboard the ship. The name of the series is a reference to a 7th season episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, which followed 4 junior officers on the Enterprise under Picard. The USS Cerritos is named after Cerritos, California, and the 4 shuttlecraft that we see are named after national parks in California: the Yosemite, the Redwood, the Joshua Tree, and the Death Valley. The star date of the episode is given as 57436.2. 47 is a number often used in Star Trek and is meant to be a sign of good luck. The series takes place in the year 2380, which is 1 year after the events of Star Trek Nemesis and before the show Picard and the Mars Attack. We are introduced to Jack Quaid as Ensign Brad Boimler. Jack Quaid is the son of Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan, and you may also know him as Huey from The Boys. The Boys also stars Carl Urban, who you may know as Dr. Leonard McCoy from 3 Star Trek movies in the Kelvin timeline. Tawny Newsome voices Ensign Beckett Mariner. Tawny Newsome just starred in Space Force on Netflix. Space Force is a farce of the United States Armed Forces Wing Space Force, who some would say is a farce of Starfleet. We see the crew of the Cerritos wearing post-TNG era uniforms. It seems that Starfleet changes up their uniforms every 3 to 4 years. Ensign Boimler starts with a log entry. Log entries are featured many times in Star Trek, but for my money, nobody does a log entry like Captain Commander Sisko. Ensign Mariner is drunk on Romulan whiskey, which may be a reference to Romulan ale, which has been shown in Star Trek multiple times. She also mentions that she's surprised that the drink is blue and not green. This is probably a reference to the fact that Romulans, along with Vulcans, have green blood. In the intro, we see Romulan warbirds fighting Borg cubes. This may be a reference to the events shown in Star Trek Picard. Noelle Wells stars as Ensign Devon Attendee. You may know Wells from her experience on Saturday Night Live. She stars as an Orion medical officer. The Orion people have been around since the original series, but it wasn't until Enterprise that we got any kind of backstory on them where it showed that females actually ruled their society. There is a Benzite on the shuttle with Ensign Tendi. Benzites have been a part of Star Trek since Star Trek The Next Generation, when they were famously racially stereotyped by Will Crusher. There also is a crew member on the shuttle that appears to be at least partially Klingon. This could be a reference to B'Elanna Torres from Star Trek Voyager. Eugene Cordero voices Ensign Sam Rutherford, who is meant to be a young LaForge who also has a cybernetic implant. This is of course not the first time we've seen a crew member with a cybernetic enhancement. I've always really liked this about Star Trek because it would be easy for them to just write off disabilities and say they cured them all, but instead by doing this they give a voice to differently abled people within a science fiction environment. Ensign Boimler mentions that the hallway gets musty because it is near the sonic showers, which is weird. I'm really glad that this was mentioned because this has always made no sense to me, and if this does make sense to somebody, please explain it to me in the comments, because if it's a sonic shower, how does sound get you clean while also causing humidity? To me, this has always been like the three seashells of Star Trek, so if you understand it, please let me know. Ensign Mariner loads a questionable holodeck program. I don't understand how people in Starfleet are still able to use holodecks on ships anymore. We've seen these things cause tons of problems, which include trying to take over the ship and kill people. We've seen crew members have holodeck addiction before, most notably Reginald Barclay from The Next Generation and Voyager. I don't get how these things are still on Federation ships. We see that another member of the away team is wearing a visor, much like Geordi LaForge used to wear. I thought this was kind of weird because by this time in the movies, even Geordi isn't using a visor anymore, so obviously the technology has progressed. The crew of the Cerritos are making second contact with the Galadonian people. When we see them, they're living in mud huts and asking for shovels for help with farming. I thought this was kind of funny because according to Starfleet's Prime Directive, they're not supposed to make contact with people that aren't warp-faring. So how are these people living in mud huts, asking for shovels, and building warp drives? I mean, I guess if Star Wars taught us anything, people can live in huts, drink blue milk, and still be spacefaring. But still, I'd really like to understand how these guys got in the Federation. Rutherford is out on a date with a Trill woman named Barnes. The Trill people have been featured multiple times in Star Trek, most notably by the joined Trill Dax, who is joined with Jadzia and Ezri throughout the run of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Barnes and Rutherford go for a spacewalk in EVA suits. I thought this was a pretty cool meta callback since this episode is titled Second Contact, and in the movie Star Trek First Contact, Picard, Worf, and Ensign I'm About to Die took a spacewalk on the hull of the Enterprise. A virus is brought onto the Cerritos, breaks out, and almost kills everyone on the ship. This is a common Star Trek trope and has happened multiple times, even though the transporter beam is designed to filter out foreign viruses. During the outbreak, we see an Andorian in sickbay being treated. Andorians have been around since the original series, but they are most famously played in the series Enterprise by Jeffrey Combs as General Shran. The bridge crew of the Cerritos includes Fred Tatasciore as Lieutenant Shax, Dawn Lewis as Captain Freeman, Jerry O'Connell as Commander Ransom, and Gillian Vigman as Dr. Ta'ana. Lieutenant Shax appears to be the head of security as well as being a Bajoran. I really like this character for a couple of reasons. One, the fact that he's a stereotypical Bajoran, so he's always angry. This was very prevalent with Major Kira Nerys on Deep Space Nine, especially the first 4 or 5 seasons, as well as Ensign Ro Laren on Star Trek Next Generation. Also, at one point in the first episode, he loses his shirt. This is an obvious callback to the fact that Kirk can't ever keep his shirt on. Dawn Lewis voices the captain of the Cerritos, Carol Freeman. She's also Ensign Mariner's mother. She puts Boimler on special assignment to follow her daughter. It seems that nepotism is pretty rampant in Starfleet. We see that Kirk has been given a few chances because of his father, as well as Tom Paris in Star Trek Voyager. Jerry O'Connell voices the first officer of the Cerritos, Commander Ransom. His wife, Rebecca Romaine, plays the part of Number One, who is the first officer of the Enterprise on Discovery and the new show Strange New Worlds. Gillian Vigman voices Ta'ana, the head doctor of the Cerritos and Acacian. Acacian is a humanoid race of cat people. In the original Star Trek The Animated Series, there was a Acacian crew member. You may remember the voice of Gillian Vigman from this famous repartee.
You retarded? What the hell's the matter with you?
You want me to be retarded?
You can see that Captain Freeman has a model of the Cerritos in her ready room. Most captains have models of their ships in their ready room, most famously Captain Picard, who destroyed his in Star Trek First Contact. Mariner mentions that Boimler will be her Chadich, which is a term from the Klingon legal system, essentially meaning a warrior's second during a trial. In the Klingon legal system, a warrior is denied all combat privileges, so a Chadich fights for them when required. This basically means that she's taunting Boimler, saying that eventually he's going to stick up for her when she needs him. Mariner mentions Sulu and his sword. Both actors who played Hikaru Sulu, John Cho and George Takei, showed that the character was fluent in the use of a sword. Mariner mentions Spock, as well as the events of Star Trek's 3, 4, and 5, and Gary Mitchell. This brings into question a problem I've had with all Star Trek properties. Why do they only reference the events that happen on the Enterprise? You literally have over 200 years of space travel, thousands of ships, and everything happened on 2 ships? Well, okay, you could say 3 ships, but 2 crews? Like, why don't you mention something that I don't know about, and then if fans latch onto it, boom, there you got another show. Why do you always have to mention the Enterprise? I just don't get it. Well, those were all the Easter eggs and references that I could see. If I missed any, point them out in the comments. For a first show, I actually enjoyed this. I get why some people don't like it, but it seems like whenever there's a new Star Trek show, there's a bunch of people that love Star Trek that don't like the new property because it's not their Star Trek. I think Star Trek is better when it's more inclusive of a lot of different people. Some people like cartoons, some people like the serious stuff, and some people like the old nostalgic stuff. But I think that if the show is given some time, it can find its legs, and it'll be a valuable part of the Star Trek fandom. I hope there isn't too much fan backlash and it changes the show. I kind of feel like this is a spiritual successor to Orville, since that's going off the air after one more season. This is kind of like Family Guy in Star Trek, so I like it. But you let me know, what did I miss? Is this show crap and I totally missed the point? Was there a ton of Easter eggs that I just didn't get? Let me know in the comments. I'll continue to review these and point out Easter eggs every week, and then when Star Trek Discovery comes on, I'll be reviewing and doing Easter egg shows for them too. Look forward to sharing them with you, and I'll see you again on What Did I Miss?